All right, what's going on, guys? I'm here joined by Kelly Schroeder of Washington and Shelly Budenhagen up from Huron. You guys, welcome to our office. Thanks for joining me today. And we're going to talk some volleyball.
Sounds good.
Yeah.
You guys excited? Pretty exciting matches tonight. We have Sodak 16 playing for Class A and B. And we're just getting all the details. Whole bunch of different matchups going on tonight. But the first thing I want to ask you guys, because this is something that we think is super just interesting from a coach's point of view, what do you guys think about just the seed points and the new power points this year in general? And how that affects the postseason play?
Well, I'll defer that one to you since you're active in it. Yeah.
We've been talking about it. I definitely like the Sodak 16 and how that is set up. Outside of my first year, we had districts and regions, and it's just I feel like the last 5 years or 4 years at state, it's been competitive. There's not a lot of 3-0 matches any night, and if it is 3-0, they're very close. There's no blowouts like there was my first year. So I definitely like the seed points in that sense. Because I think it gives your best teams a chance to get to state and not have to play each other to get to state. I mean, you look at Class B, and perfect example, and Northwestern's not going to have a chance this year, but Northwestern and Warner always had to play each other to go to state. And I think, when I first took the job and was looking at that, I think I looked it up. And it was either Warner or Northwestern was in the championship game like 19 out of 20 years. Mm-hmm. So the last few years they've been playing each other in that championship game, and really that's to go to state and not in that state championship match.
These years with the PowerPoints, and back. I'm from the olden days, and so we're looking at district opponents and the big rivalries that we used to have, and being from the ESD in the rural areas compared to the metro, I always thought maybe the state tournament should stay as a state representation tournament. But at the same time, I also see the validity that the PowerPoint system has when you look at how close all classes and every match is, and so I think the PowerPoint is working in that sense where it's really, really competitive and it's really fun. And when you go to the state tournament, for the most point, because of how that is, everyone has a chance in every single night. And so I think the tweaks that are being made are justified, and we're learning as we go, right? Mm-hmm. But I think for the most point, it's been really fun, and especially if you're looking at getting the best teams at the state tournament.
Yeah, definitely. And I think, we were kind of talking about it as well earlier, but there's been some of those upsets at state because of those seed points. You look at even last year. I mean, Harrisburg takes O'Gorman to 5 and almost upsets, the 1 seed as an 8 seed because it is just that competitive because of those seed points. So, maybe in years past that first round, that 1 versus 8 seed isn't that competitive and that close. So
or the 2-7. I mean, it didn't matter what seed we as Huron was ever. We always felt like we had a chance to win at the state tournament, and that's scary to be the higher seed, but it's also really fun to be the lower seed. So I think it's been a great move to get away from the districts, and I never thought I would say that. Never thought I would say that. So the competitiveness. Now, I still think we've got an issue if we're going to be talking about a state representation where maybe a certain part of the state might be wiped out, but at the same time, then what do we got to find a way to compete too.
And I think, correct me if I'm wrong, but Class A and Class B still has that opportunity. Mm-hmm. It's just double A with teams that we have. It's a little bit tough when you have those seed points and 16 teams are playing. When you only have 19, you might not have that state representation.
Mm-hmm. But I'm even looking now at some of the B bracket here. A lot of it is East River teams. Most of them is, and most of them are. So I don't know. It's going to be interesting, and but I like the future of South Dakota volleyball. It's a ton of fun.
Yeah, absolutely. And with that, actually, I'm going to switch one of these matches over to the Burke Woolsey Wessington match. Gosh, which one do we want to switch? These two are actually pretty
I
close.
think you got to switch the Scotties and the Knights. It's 24-24 with the Comets and Trojans.
See me pop on camera because I have to do it from the side here. So it's funny that you say, any matchup can result in an upset, if you will, because I think there was 2-7 upsets of the 3 last year at state with Watertown and
Roosevelt.
Roosevelt beat Watertown, and then I believe it was Class A as well. I can't remember which was the team that pulled that off, but really exciting because that's what state should be. It should be the 8 best teams playing out the end of the season. We didn't troubleshoot the remote before this, so forgive me.
Nice swing.
Big swing.
Yeah, swing and match point there. That might break the Trojans' back right there. They had him and let it go.
Something that we saw from Parkston, because they actually, I call it a mini upset. They didn't totally upset MVP the other night to get here. They were the lower seed, of course, but I was impressed by their defense. This Parkston team really isn't a team that we've talked a lot about so far this year, just because they have been kind of up and down. But MVP had a really tough time scoring the ball. And a team like Rapid City Christian, who we've seen has been a little bit up and down this year, offensively and emotionally, I think that's maybe where they're kind of getting to them here. But the Comets take set 2, I believe that was.
Yeah, they're up 2-0.
But Parkston's been battling.
Huh?
They're battling. Parkston's battling.
And I mean, the last 2 points there were 2 great shots. I mean, to go up by 1, their middle has a hard cut shot and scores going back to 5, and then a big swing from their outside.
So I don't know how much you guys have been following Class B volleyball this year, in the roller coasters that has been. But we have Woolsey Wessington pulled up here on the right side of the screen. And Class B as a whole have been just crazy, 1 through 24 almost. Woolsey Wessington, of course, took down Northwestern, one of the first matches of the season, really to earn their stripes, if you will, and have kind of been a little bit up and down since then, just with the talent level at Class B. But what are your guys' thoughts on Woolsey Wessington making their first Sodak 16 appearance here tonight?
Well, I know some of these kids, just basically because they're from the same area, and so I think they're, number one, really excited to get some of the attention that their football team and usually gets, and their boys basketball team gets. And I was hoping that the nerves would settle, but it's going to come down to them being able to hit the ball. I know that Maya Boomsma is a really good player, and if their setters can deliver the ball to their hitters, but I think their passing here too is going to be a huge issue. But their nerves have to be a little, they don't get to play in a big stage like this many times. And so I was hoping they'd be able to settle down and relax, and this indicative of how this match is going to go, hopefully. But look for them they're trying to run a faster offense, or they were, and so if they can pass, that might put a little bit of pressure. But this Boomsma kid is the real deal here too.
Yeah, she's definitely got a heavy arm. She takes the swing right there. And again, if you're joining us tonight, we're maybe not the crew to tune in if you want full match coverage of all these matches, as we'll kind of be moving around. So pull up streams of your own. But leave us a comment or tweet us. Drop us an Instagram message if you want us to talk about anything specific tonight. We're just kind of here to chat and do a round table talk of some of the fun stuff going on in South Dakota Volleyball tonight.
So that defense right there dug Maya 3 times. And then, defense can change the way a team plays offensively. And so this might come down to...
Yeah, it would have been interesting to see. I mean, she's going back to serve now, but, that's tough when you get dug 2-3 times in a row in a rally and then you get blocked to finish. It would have been nice to see how she would have bounced back if she would have stayed in front row.
So what are some of the things that you both would tell a player like that, playing a great defensive team like Burke, who can make you take multiple swings? How do you get your players to switch the mindset to maybe try different shots? Or what would you tell a player that's frustrated by having a hard time scoring?
I mean, one thing that I tell the girls is, if one shot isn't working, you got to try something different, but you're going to play some of those good, tough defensive teams. One big thing that we talked about all the time when we played Huron with Shelley is you got to be able, you're going to get dug. It's going to happen. So your mentality needs to be that you're going to continue to swing and stay aggressive. Now aggressive isn't always swinging hard. That can be tips, roll shots, cuts, all that stuff. But you can't get frustrated because then you're just letting them get in your head, and then all of a sudden your confidence is gone.
Absolutely. And Shelley, what's the secret to developing a defense that frustrates another team's offense?
I think it's this mentality. it's just a mentality that if you can get your kids to buy into it, and then it's the kids selling the ice to the Eskimos that, we were always one of the shortest teams in the whole entire state tournament. And we knew that if we could play defense and frustrate a team like Sioux Falls, Washington, or even O'Gorman last year, we thought if we could dig them and frustrate them and force them into errors is basically what we tried to do. And we said teams were always going to punch us, but if we could punch back with our defense, we were going to have a chance. And so what we tried to do was dig 3 times in a rally and know that maybe on the 4th try we'd have a chance because we'd be able to part the seas at that point. And that's what I'm seeing Burke here do is dig those guys about 3-4 times and then all of a sudden they've got an alley open. And I like the way Burke plays. They're scrappy and they're tough.
Yeah, they're a fun team and a young team, really. Maybe that's where we go next is what is the difference when it comes to postseason? Talking about high school volleyball, you're working with anywhere from freshmen, obviously, up to seniors. Do you treat them differently? Do you try to get the upperclassmen to talk to the underclassmen? What is your guys' approach just mentally, I guess, when it comes to postseason, when you have players that may be playing, for the last time until next year, and then some players who are playing for the last time ever?
It kind of depends on your experience. If you're a team that hasn't gone far in the postseason, you can't. They don't have the experience to draw back on. But one big thing that I preach with my kids is I don't care if you're a senior or a freshman. If you can be a leader, be a leader. Yes, you want to be able to fall on your juniors and your seniors and your upperclassmen, but if you got a freshman or sophomore that can step up and lead, why take that away from them?
Yeah.
So if they can step up in those situations, by all means, go ahead.
And and going a little bit further on that, I think sometimes seniors can play tight, especially in this match when
might
you're
be their
so
last
close.
game.
Exactly, when they're so close, and so we always asked the juniors and the sophomores and the freshmen and sometimes the 8th grader to step up and be that leader at that point and carry the seniors and make plays. And I mean, I don't know if that was ever a big key for us, but it seemed like then if we could get that going, the seniors would eventually settle down a little bit and then just play 1 point at a time.
Mm-hmm.
And that's where I worry about Wolsey a little bit too, that I know how hungry they are and how bad they want this. But if they could just worry about 1 point at a time, it might change this. And they're just seeing where the finish line is, I think.
Yeah, it's a pretty special place that you can get to in a match when, you know, this team is playing. When the moment becomes bigger and then you're actually able to take that step back and that breath, and then the players come in and they both have the adrenaline, but they're also calmed down too. I think that's almost when, you know, the best volleyball comes in, because they kind of get the best of both worlds there.
Nice one-handed setter attack behind her head. Did you see that? I think it was a setter, right? Yeah.
Had to have been.
Yeah, she was.
Kylie, I believe, stepped into the setting duties this year for Rapid City Christian after losing Riley Freeland last year, who was one of the most talented setters in Class A. So Kylie doing a good job of just kind of doing her, sticking to her role and doing her thing. She does a lot defensively, as you see there for the comments, just keeping the ball alive and moving the ball around. They're pretty outside heavy when it comes to Anna Eggy and Olivia Kiefer, so kind of an easier job for a setter when that heavy arm is the outside and opens up some of that wiggle room there.
I see Arlington's up 2 now.
Up 2-0.
Looks like Falkland's they're up by 3.
Have you guys watched much of Arlington this season?
I haven't, no.
I have not seen a lot. I just know at the beginning of the season they were one of the powerhouses, and it was always a compliment if you were either beat them or play with them.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think their big thing is going to try to be to supplement Hadley Carlson. You know, she's as talented as any player in Class B, but especially in Class B this year, you need more than one player to be able to make it through the long haul.
Do they ever play any high school games outside of games to go to state in the Corn Palace? And I see they have lines down, but I'm assuming they're probably taped.
They I know the Colonels used to go there quite a bit and play, but now in the fall I think the Corn Palace has been pretty busy with their other events. So I have not noticed a lot of other volleyball,
Yeah.
DW or anything. I think DW made some adjustments in their own Christian center there. So this is the first time this year I've seen anything here at the Corn Palace.
I think the Colonels like their home court advantage. I know their gym.
It was definitely loud when we played them.
Their gym is tough to play in, whether that be the heat or
That too.
The slippery floor.
Yeah.
I know there was times back in the district days and stuff. And Mitchell, you know, it was always tough to go to that. We call it the Corn Hut because it's yellow. It's not the Corn Palace. I would actually record loud cheering and play that in our big, huge arena, just so that they could get to the decibel that we couldn't hear each other in the court. And when you're calling plays and audibling on the court, players have to be able to hear each other.
Mm-hmm.
So it's that loud.
It was definitely tough to play in
Hard to
there because they
replicate.
brought a big crowd. You know, we had our freshmen and sophomores were doing cheers against them and that stuff, but it was tough, and it's definitely an adjustment. We had the same thing up in Fargo. It was just super loud, and something that you don't ever practice,
Right.
and you don't really see that often until you go to some of those smaller venues. But definite advantage that they have at their home court.
If you think about it, it's a great atmosphere, you know. I always told our kids, you know, the boys basketball, they play in front of a lot of people, right? Girls basketball, not so much, but this was our chance to play in a really packed gym and to enjoy it, embrace that kind of atmosphere.
Well, even the interesting thing too is it's the way that gym is set up. It's volleyball oriented. It's not basketball. I mean, you see it at the college level, but their court is yellow and everything else around the outside is a different color. And
Yeah, there's a reason why she likes to play there.
yeah,
And the bad thing though is they don't have the corn balls, the big popcorn balls in the Mitchell High School, where the Corn Palace has the big corn.
Of course.
Yeah, the corn balls are called popcorn balls, which are really the best popcorn balls. If you haven't had one,
I haven't had one.
you gotta have one.
Now you know. So I think if I'm seeing the score right, that'll bring, Wolsey Wessington
20
is
to
on the
17.
left, 20 to 17. Is this still set 1?
Yeah, I think it
Yep.
is. We've got Macy,
Oh, no.
Lucy in the back serving there.
Burke is up 1-0
Where do you see that?
on the left screen there. Wolsey, Wessington, and Burke. 15-25,
Oh.
and then now it's 16-20.
Wow.
So 17-20.
So how big is that first set when it comes to any match really, but even postseason play, to get to state still when you know maybe the end of the season is on the line? How big of a breath of fresh air is taking that first set?
I mean, it's always nice to start out 1-0, but I mean, that doesn't necessarily mean anything in the grand scheme of things. I mean, you can start out 1-0 and lose 3-1 or lose 3-2. It's sometimes it kind of depends on your team a little bit too, and the discussion you have. You can be up 1-0 and all of a sudden take a step back and say we're good and we have this cushion. You got to continue to push forward and go out and earn every point. And you know, one thing that we've talked a lot about this year with our girls too, same thing that you kind of said, is, you know, 1 point at a time. Can't think about the point coming up or the point that just happened. You got to move on and focus on the current point that you're trying to get.
And staying in the moment on that point takes a lot of discipline.
Mm-hmm.
Not worrying about what's going to happen. Did you see that play that Macy Lucy, that right back made there, that dig?
She's kind of one of those do-all players for Wolsey Wessington, and definitely one of those seniors that they lean on. I know they kind of run a funky offense where they do not a full 6-2, but kind of a little bit here and there, and she's definitely one of those go-tos.
I'll be curious now if that is the play that could change the match. That could be the play that could change the whole momentum of that match.
We'll write it down now. Wolsey Wessington,
Right
20,
there. Yeah.
20,
in all
21.
honesty, sometimes it is that. It's that big dig, or it's that big kill or block or ace, and all of a sudden it just changes the whole vibe. You know, it gives life to a team. And
Speaking of life to a team, we have Parkston up 19-16, I believe, after the Comets take the first 2 sets, 2-0, nearing the end stretch. I know something that we talked about a lot in college was being the first team to get to 20. And once you're in the 20s, it's just a game of 5. Is that something you guys talk about or kind of think about in your head? Or what is that mentality like when you're nearing the end of a set? That could mean the match.
well, one of our things that we talk about this year with our team, one of our goals is to win the first 5. And I think more so for us, we've definitely dug a lot of holes this year. We've been fortunate enough to dig ourselves out. So just trying to alleviate some of that stress, we kind of placed an emphasis on getting the first 5 points of the match and starting out strong. But we also talked to, I think it was our last game against Lincoln. One of our big things going into the third set that I told the girls is we're gonna play mini games to 5, and first to 5, and then we're restarting. If it's 5-5 or 3-2, okay, it's a brand new game to 5. But definitely, you get 20-20, and it's all right. Race to 5, win by 2.
There was many times when we played, we just talked about where we thought separation was going to happen. Because volleyball, it doesn't matter really. Sometimes you talent on one side of the net. It's just how the ball bounces. So we talked about when separation would happen, and things really are going to start amping up at 18-18 or right around in there. At 20-20, it could be anybody's match, and so that's when we really relied on our mental toughness. And then you're hoping that all the stuff that you've practiced and all the reps that you've done, that at 20-20 your kids just have confidence to get it done and not be afraid to make a mistake. And so I never, that's an interesting concept, Coach, because we never broke it up into segments like that. We just always said you only have to win by 2. It doesn't matter. And the first one that can get that separation will have a lot of success. So
yeah. Well, and two, a lot of things come into play, and some of it's rotation based. There's times that in the past, like say we're playing O'Gorman last year, and it's okay. We need to, when Bergen is front row, we need to try and side out as quick as we can and get, either push points when she's in and kind of balance that attack out, or get her in the back row, and then we really have to push.
ooh, tough call there. That's a tough call. That was a great hustle play.
If you can't tell, we're holding ourselves back here on some of the comments towards the refs on these live streams, but we had a lengthy discussion earlier about, how involved refs should be when it comes to just calls in general.
Well, I think we're both players' coaches, right? I mean, we want the players to determine it. And I've been an official, and it is hard. And I really don't ever want to do it again. It's that hard.
Absolutely.
Burke won.
Yeah,
Burke is up 2-0.
So no disrespect to the officials, and I think where the coaches have an advantage is we see a ton of balls in one day. And we're trained, our eyes are trained differently than an official who only gets to ref once or twice a week. But they've got a tough job, and if one or two calls is going to make a match, then I don't think we're coaching the game right either.
Yeah. Yeah, definitely, I agree with that. I mean, there's been times I've said that exact same comment. You can't blame one or two calls because there's 25 points. So 2 points can't dictate a match. You can't put yourself in that situation. But it is a tough job being a referee, and sometimes when you make those calls, you're going to make one person happy and you're going to make the other person angry, and you got fans and parents yelling at you, all the time for different calls, and it's tough.
Well, especially in the rule book when some of them are judgment, and that's not the ref's fault. That's the rule book.
Yeah,
that's just the nature of the game,
and some of it too is just I think volleyball's getting more popular, but a lot of people just don't even know the rules. They have the rule first contact, you can double the ball, and I still have you still have the parents and the students that somebody doubles it, and they're asking for a double call, and it's like, no, you can do that. You can double the serve. You can double a hard driven ball. So just some of that too. It's such a newer sport that.
and sometimes it's fun to coach because you don't have parents that really understand what we're doing, and so with basketball coaches, they've got how many Saturday afternoon or Wednesday morning coaches at the round table discussing everything at the coffee table. Where volleyball, we don't have those kind of critics yet. It's kind of fun. But
yeah, I remember my high school days. My dad used to get upset when I used to tip or not hit the ball basically as hard as he could because he thought I wasn't trying very hard or I was letting up. And I was like, it probably took me until I was halfway through college to tell him and for him to actually realize that just not hitting it as hard as I possibly could every single time was maybe the smartest thing to do.
Well, and I mean, I won't say any names, but I have a relative that, you know, the year that I had like PK, you know, he was always like, what, like why are you not keeping her in the match? She should play front row and back row, and really you should just rotate her back to left front. Like she should not come out. So you have some of those parents and it's like, well, you can't do that.
I just
you
had
know,
a parent say that. Yeah.
She's not a good back row defender.
Yeah.
Like,
I don't know if they like. There's no time clock on this either, and so some parents don't understand that if their kids are their front row and only play front row, but we side out 3 times, they're only in there for 3 plays or whatever.
mm-hmm.
That bothers them when the other person is in for longer. There's just no time clock. It just all depends. But that's the beauty of the sport, right?
Mm-hmm.
Ooh.
Absolutely. That's why I think, you know, we don't look at stats as much, you know, when it comes to rankings or doing anything like that. But I like to look at stats, you know, after a match because I do think they tell some sort of story. But they're fun to look at after a match that you've watched. For example, your O'Gorman match, just looking at percentage-wise and why they were going to certain players at certain times. How much do you guys look at stats when you're scouting a match versus when kind of you're coaching your own team?
I mean, I kind of look at them sometimes to just see where we're at, because you know sometimes you have to rewatch a game. You know, we talk about the O'Gorman game, and you know, in the moment, I didn't even realize that the last 5 points, you know, 3 of them were from Carly Beckstrand.
Mm-hmm.
You know, she just stepped up for us on the right side.
Well, you weren't watching our webcast because
I was, you know, but too, it just kind of, sometimes I look at it to see, you know, what's our passing percentage? Where are we at? Okay, if we're not scoring, is it because of our passing? Okay, well, our passing's, you know, above a 2 pass. Why aren't our attackers, you know, taking care of the ball? Or just looking at some statistics that way.
Sometimes those biggest stats aren't the ones that get put in the newspaper, like hitting percentage or kill numbers. I think the biggest one, like you said, is passing numbers or what you're passing overall. Because there's a big difference whether you're passing, you know, a 2-1 and a 1-8. You know, to a lot of people that's 0.3. But that can make a huge difference between your outside getting 90 swings and your outside getting 50 swings.
Yeah.
In a 5-set match.
Yeah, and so for here in Tigers in the last couple of years, sometimes we were winning matches by hitting .0 something, seriously. So it's not always the hitting, but it's certainly, if you can play, you know, the serve and pass game, how many times you can do that. But sometimes what I paid attention more was if your rotation 4 was absolutely blistering our rotation 4, why? If your rotation 6, I mean, so we would go back to practice and just practice at rotation 4, practice rotation 6. So I think you made a comment earlier about what rotations was working, you know, and why. But it all comes down to serving and passing, really.
Yeah. And that's one thing that we do too. I mean, we'll stat stuff out, and it's, you know, our side out percentage is this, and rotation 2, 3, and 6. So let's work a little bit more on 1, 4, and 5, and big swing there.
We even went one year. We had Coach Lean, who's now the head coach for here in Tigers. And he's another one that thinks the game really well. And if our left back, so in zone 5 passed a 2, where was the setter taking it and why? And what was the result? If she passed a 3, what was going on? So there's a whole bunch of different scenarios.
Sorry, we keep getting distracted by this huge point here. Looks like we're going for
big pancake, and then just a little bit too anxious on that ball. But I mean, even, you know, talking about statistics and rotations, I mean, that was one thing, you know, I kind of brought it up earlier. We look at trying to win the first 5. So because that was when we were looking at our stats, hoping that we would side out right away. Rotation 5 and 6 were two of our better rotations that we would score in, or had better passer ratings. So we wanted to start in those rotations as well. And it also puts our L1 in a position to start in left front and get more swings in the front row.
And a lot of times, because we were short, and we always said serving is our first line of defense, we put our best server, second best, third, fourth, fifth, and went at people that way. So trying to get the first 5 points, definitely with your serving, and that's how we did it too. So I think there's just different ways to interpret the stats or interpret the plays and what's happening. But ultimately it comes down to what fits your team and your personnel at that time the best.
Yeah, I think that's something so cool about volleyball is that there's so many different styles of play. I mean, you can be a team, like the Huron Tigers have been in for so many years, just that defensive, strong team that can stick in it with anyone, versus a Washington team last year with 2 6'4" ladies, and, they're just towering over you guys at the net. But I've always been a bigger fan of defense because I think it's, kind of a more fun game to watch, and there's more kind of give and take, and there's more thinking and that kind of thing too. But that's what I love so much about volleyball is that there's so many different ways to play it, and there's so many things that different people can excel at too.
I think Division I volleyball has come full circle too in that, where we here in Tigers we'd go down to Nebraska team camp and even the U of M team camp. And do you remember Nebraska went from kind of short people in the back, and he had those long, big, tall people trying to play the back row too. They were taking up a bunch of space. And now if you look, he's building a really fast back row. And when you watch some of their matches now, they have incredible rallies. And they even have short girls attacking from the back row now. If you can call 5'8" short. In the Huron world, 5'8" is really tall. But yeah, I mean, the defense is going back to, I think, a really fast game now and speeding everything up back there.
Well, and like you said, it kind of comes full circle. I think offenses are getting better, so you have to be better defensively. You have to get touches, and you got to get digs, or it's just who can put more balls away, the fastest. So you're getting those 6'5" right sides. Who, in high school, it's like if you're 6'5", you got to be a middle, but you got girls that are big and tall that are playing all 3 positions, and you maybe got to have that speed and that quickness.
I've watched some GPAC too, so that's your conference right around here in northwest Iowa, and every good team in GPAC, they're fast in the back row. They're super fast, and a lot of them are playing 6'2s again. They can put those tall hitters out on the right, and they get the fast girls in the back row.
What are your guys' thoughts on 6'2" versus 5'1", and what the benefits are to having, one solid setter throughout the whole 6 rotations versus maybe, giving up, maybe not having that leader? I guess I always think of the setter as a leader through all 6 rotations, and maybe giving that up for some height.
I think it's tough. I mean, if you look at a 6'2", the perks are your setter's always back row. You have 3 attackers at all times in the front row, but you do lose some of that consistency. And a lot of times, your setters are your captains on the floor. I talk with our setter. I mean, you're the quarterback. You're touching the ball every play, and people are going to look to you with everything that happens offensively. So you have that. I think the other tough part is do you have, when you look at a 6'2", personnel-wise, you got to have more. With a 5'1", you could really play with 6 or 7 girls and have that libero, where 6'2", you got to have 2 right sides, you got to have 2 outsides, 2 middles, 2 setters, and then if you have a DS or a libero, you got to try and find a team that has 8 solid girls instead of maybe 6.
I think the setters then too, to train them, it's difficult to get them to match tempo, match rhythm, and you can't have one setter that likes high when the other one is going fast. And so that's a tough training thing too. So in college, I think you're seeing that happen because they're college athletes.
Yeah, a
And
little bit more consistency with the setter
Yeah.
position.
Then you're seeing some Division I teams go against 6'2" as well, so they can put those big, tall 6'8" kids in the right. So
That's really
you know,
tall.
in a perfect world, your setter would be 6'2" and a great blocker, right?
Yeah.
I mean, yeah. But I know that when the last few years we've had Tenley, a 5'5", could jump fairly well, but that was a little scary when you've got big, tall hitters out there going over the top of her, and so you've got to have a really good right back, and you got to be able to side out in other ways. You got to be able to really play out a system well.
Really, you gotta have a tough right back.
Yeah,
Defender that's going to be ready to take that hard-driven ball down the line.
and not only that, but if you back her up to take that hard-driven ball, she better be able to have good speed to come in and get the tip. So, again, it comes down to personnel. But what do you like better? Well, like you said, consistency of 5'1" is pretty cool. But a 6'2", if you can get those setters to match, and you've got two really good tall kids in the right, I think it's good too.
Have you ever coached a 6'2"?
I have. Yeah.
I don't think I've ever ran a 6'2".
Yeah.
With any of my
So
teams.
Tyann, my oldest daughter, who's now coaching with here, we played a 6'2", and she played middle. So at the end of the day, she ran a lot. But we worked really hard. Luckily, I had another setter who wasn't as tall as Tyann, but we spent a lot of time on matching tempo. And we spent a lot of time on, one middle hitting off a tie, and then right away the other middle, or the same middle hitting off of Crystal was her name. So it just takes a lot of time.
Yeah, he's really the only person that they're up with for 3 rotations would be their right side.
Right.
And I think, outsides you hope would be able to adjust to the different tempo sets a lot easier. But yeah, if you want to run that middle attack or that fast attack, then there needs to be that consistency.
Yeah. So it looks like Woolsey's bouncing back. I think that's 16-13 there on the scoreboard. Seems like when times are tough, they really do lean on Boomsma. Wherever she is, she spends time on the left and the right side. They just seem to find her, and we've been impressed with how she's handled it, both attitude-wise, and she never seems to get down on herself, and physically, she's always ready to take a rip at the ball.
She's a competitor. Her dad was a real good athlete himself. Fun fact, they go to our church, and when she was little, if someone told me that she'd be this kind of athlete, I would have said no way. She was in dresses and all that kind of stuff. But
It's interesting to see, and I, not knowing Boomsma well enough that, I've watched when she's attacking, they're really coming inside. Off blockers coming basically like middle of the court, 10-foot line, and their left back is almost playing at that 3-point line. From this angle, I don't know if the blockers are taking away all of her cross and hard cross and trying to force her line, but if she can hit a cut shot, I think that shot's really open right now.
We'll have to text Coach Utech that info. I always wondered how much coaches share with each other, that kind of stuff. I'd have to assume not much, at least when you're within the same class.
I
As
think
far
coaches
as-
are kind of finicky that way. We kind of protect our stuff, don't we? I mean,
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, in this day and age, though, too, like you can. Well, like right now, we're watching all these games. I mean, if you want to find film, it's
Nothing's
not.
a secret.
It's not back in the day where I mean, I was even talking with our AD, and he was kind of talking one time how back in the old days you'd have to drive to Mitchell and meet the Huron coach and share tapes and. I mean, you don't have to do that now. Everything is live stream, especially with last year with COVID. Everybody got that stuff installed if they didn't already have it, and you can watch pretty much whatever you want.
Mm-hmm.
we haven't talked much about Garrettson.
Yeah.
They've kind of come from the basement in the last few years. He has really rebuilt that program, and they're going to be a scary team.
Yeah.
Coach Northrup came from Aberdeen Central. Real good coach. I don't know how many state championships he has under his belt. But I think he's just having a lot of fun now, just coaching. And
Yeah.
Garrettson obviously has a lot of good athletes too, but you can have athletes and not have good teams, and so he's made those athletes into a good team.
Yeah, I think what they do really well is work together and kind of give and take a lot between. You talk about feeding the hitter who has the hot hand, and I think Garrettson does that really well. There's not always one specific athlete that is always leading the team. They kind of share within 2 to 3 really every night.
It looks like Faulkton 1 and 3, Arlington 1 and 4. We already have Warner up there. Yeah.
We may have to take a break after these matches settle down to
Christian.
Aberdeen
update our
Christian.
scoreboard.
So Chester's up 1-0 on Gayville. Fallen. It'd be interesting to see if this 5-12 matchup, if the Trojans can come back and tie it up at 2-2 and go 5.
Mm-hmm.
I like the way they battle. Someone forgot to tell them that they were the underdog, maybe.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think they won in 4 against MVP the other night as well, but I don't think they'd be afraid of 5 sets. And then, so is Class A, do they reshuffle, or do they earn that
Class A and Class B, I think they reseed.
reseed? Okay.
Yeah, the double A's, we treat that like the Sweet 16, and
Yeah. Okay.
And I know
So
there's
they
been
go-
there's been talks about that, but I think, like we kind of said earlier, I mean, when you only have 19 teams, to reseed is kind of a little bit different than Class A and Class B, where a lot of those teams don't see each other. I mean,
Yeah.
double A's for the most part, we see everybody throughout the year, so our seed points are pretty true to where the rankings are. You're still going to have some of those possible upsets, but I also kind of like that idea. I mean, if you're the 16 seed, and you upset the 1, should you really have to play
You've kind of earned
the
that.
1 seed again at state
Yeah.
in first round? You've already kind of earned that spot. And there really hasn't been any upsets. I mean, outside of an 8-9, but
Yeah.
I mean, we'll see how this year goes. But I think for the most part, the last 4 years that we've had a Sodak, 1 through 7 has made it.
Mhm.
But yeah, it'll be an interesting AA Sodak come Thursday. I think there's some possibilities of some upsets, so we'll see.
Yeah, a lot like, Class B, Class AA has kind of been a little bit all over the place. I mean, you guys are pretty much the only team that has really, O'Gorman's really stayed at the top 2 the whole season, but 3 through 12 has been reshuffled almost every single week.
Yeah.
How much of that do you think has to do with just the parity in playing multiple teams multiple times? How difficult it is to beat a talented team twice?
Well, and I think too, one thing with Double A when we play each other, I think we're all super competitive. So I mean, that's the tough part too. You could have a 500 record, but you're playing tough teams all the time. So I mean, I think that's where we're seeing kind of some of those upsets in the state tournament, where we talked about a 2-7 upset or a 3-6. Some of those matches where just because of a couple tough losses that were maybe tight games in the season, you get that 6 or 7 seed. But I mean, you're just as good as 1, 2, or 3. I mean, you look at the last few weeks of regular season, and Jefferson goes to Pierre, and they're at the time an 11 seed, and Pierre's a 3, and they pull out an upset, and then now all of a sudden you have that fluctuation. Huron winning in 3 against Brandon Valley. Aberdeen taking Roosevelt to 5. There's just been a lot of tough matches in Double A. I mean, even us, outside of this weekend, our last 3 matches, we went to 5 with Brandon, we went to 5 with OG, and we went to 5 with Jefferson. So Double A's tough. You got to show up every night, and it's anybody's ball game.
Yeah, there's just not an easy night. There's not an easy match, and if you go into a match like that, you're in big trouble. There's really not any points off either. You can't relax in a set. You can't relax in a point, which you shouldn't anyway if you're competing. But
Is it 24, 22?
Yeah.
Stay aggressive.
You say stay aggressive, and you see that, I believe that's Addison Indahl, who finally takes a big rip at the ball, scores to keep Burke alive in hopes of sweeping Woolsey Weston, who's been kind of the talk of the town this season.
they got Booms on the back row here too.
Maybe we'll talk about the difference between a two-handed tip and a one-handed tip here after this rally's done, and just what a big difference that can make.
It worked.
See, there's that 3 dig.
Yeah,
and
exactly.
it
That
comes
was a
down
bit
to-
more than
Yeah.
3.
I don't know, if you two-hand tip, I think that sometimes is a sign that you're not really trusting your swing.
Yeah.
It's also maybe being a little bit afraid of making a mistake. And maybe that was her strategy, to just keep the ball alive and not make a mistake.
It's some of the stuff that we talk about. After you got dug again, the 3rd time, then all of a sudden it's, maybe I need to switch it up. Maybe I need to go with that two-handed pushover or tip, and you kind of lose that confidence, and that's what defense can do. I mean, when you play tough defense, your attackers all of a sudden start questioning what's open or whether or not they can swing.
So if you're Woolsey Weston head coach, UTEC here, what are you telling your girls after the season that they've had, record-breaking, history-making in their program? They finally got a set under their belt against a tough Burke team. After going down 0-2, what are you telling them in this huddle right now after you pull out the set 3 win?
I would be saying personally, well, first of all, I would have probably approached it that we were the underdog based on Berg's history and with, state tournaments and their reputation. But their body language was better. They looked like they were having more fun. They looked like they weren't as the communication is also a huge thing right here where they and trust in the process and trust in your reps. But to me, that third set, that looked like the most loose they've played until the last maybe 2-3 points there.
Yeah, and I almost wonder, we looked at that first set score and the difference that there was. I think some of that inexperience maybe, or some of those nerves of, hey, this could be the first time that we could do this. I think they've kind of worked through that a little bit, but I think going back to what we talked about, as a coach, I'd be saying, hey, 1 point at a time. Okay, can't put extra pressure. Each point is only worth 1. It's not worth 2, 3, or 4. Each point that we get is worth 1 point. So, and then I think too, just communicating and doing those small things is what's gonna win this match.
And of course, serve and pass.
Serve and pass, definitely.
Well, you talk about out hustling teams too. You hear that more in basketball, but definitely in volleyball, you've got to out hustle, and so we can control that. Sometimes we can't control what the other team is doing, but you definitely can control how much you're hustling. Brooks coming out swinging hard, and you right now have Wolsey running around.
I think this Parkston Rapid City Christian, both teams are in the 20s. I'm not sure exactly when the timeout was called, but I'm mid-20s.
I think it was supposed to somewhere around 22. Nope.
22-21. Trojans. Serve tough.
I really like the way how Bert came out here in this set right here and set the tone.
Oh my goodness.
Good swing. Up 2.
Parkston will take the edge, 24-22. Try to push this to 5 against the Comets.
Be interesting to see if they serve at the outside and try and make a pass in.
Okay, so that's almost college atmosphere with that student body right behind that server. That's pretty incredible. Is that their home crowd right behind them? I'm assuming, right? We wouldn't put the other crowd right behind him, would we?
Where are they playing at?
Kadoka area, it looks like standing room only. And this again is that 5. My fiance's picking out suits today, so.
Oh. He just wants your approval.
Oh my goodness. Looks like whoever's running the The live stream has ended it. Oh. No, put it back up. Put it back up.
So yeah, it'll be interesting to see this fifth set how both teams come out, because really they've been, I mean, Parkston and Rapid City Christian have been battling back and forth. I mean, all 4 sets have been a close score. So it'll be interesting to see if one of the teams comes out and is aggressive right away and builds up a lead in that short game to 15, or if it's going to be back and forth.
The fifth set can tell so many different stories too, you know, because how many times do you see teams battle back and forth,
You know, what can the comments do to come out and kind of them and kind of get some things in their favor. And it still works.
And we're back. All right, so we had to take a quick bathroom break and figuring out here our camera setup. We got the same 2 matches on. Trojans lead Rapid City Christian 11-7 here in the 5th. And then Burke leads Woolsey Wessington 19 to
It's 14.
14, I believe. Now 20-14. So we talk about the different stories that a 5th match can really tell here, or a 5th set can really tell. And now we see Parkston taking, I believe, their first time out as Rapid City is able to, kind of edge their way back in 9-11 here. What is your approach in the 5th match or in the 5th set? I know we kind of talked earlier just about the first 5 points mentality, but what do you, and how does it really change, the vibe really of a 5th set when you don't switch sides of the court? Do you miss switching sides of the court?
I don't know. I guess I don't even really remember. How long ago did they change that? Was that after?
Just last year.
That's COVID. That's
yeah.
a COVID rule.
Of
Yeah.
changing at 8 or?
Or changing it all. Really.
Yeah.
Changing it all.
We've never in high school changed.
Okay, that's what I didn't think so.
I think that's
Trying to
up for
remember.
discussion almost every year, but
Did
COVID
we
took
change
it
at
out.
8 in Iowa?
Mm-hmm. We did. In volleyball,
Yeah.
I think. Yeah.
Well, I think in the 5th set, it's the team that comes out and sets the tone right away. And, usually how do you set the tone when you serve tough,
Mm-hmm.
attack, and a good set, swing away. It can also be that, can you limit your mistakes too?
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm.
And so sometimes it's just luck, and sometimes it's just how you've prepared the whole season right now at this point. For the 5th set, there is a bigger sense of urgency that if you haven't practiced that, your kids may not have a lot of success.
And sometimes even in the 5th, even just practicing starting in a different rotation. There's been times where, I talked about this year we start in 4, but if you start in 1, your L1 is going back row fairly soon, and like you said, you need to set the tone right away. A lot of times, if you're outside heavy, do you want to start with that girl in left front
Mm-hmm.
instead of in right front?
And then if there's a certain player maybe killing you or a certain player going off in the 4th set, do you kind of take that gamble and kind of fix your rotation a little
Yeah.
bit to match her without knowing what the other coach is really going to do either? It's tough to know which match I'm wanting to watch right now because these both are super tight. Rapid City Christian's coming back, and this might be the end for Woolsey, and it is.
I think sometimes in AA you miss that excitement. The B's and the A's, it definitely is a longer road to get to the state tournament.
Mm-hmm.
Where the AA's, what's scary, what people don't realize it's scary, it's one and done. I mean, if
Yeah.
you trip once, you're done.
Well, and I think too, not that we don't have fans, but it's when you're playing in those big venues, your student section seems a lot smaller.
Mm-hmm.
You look here and we're watching this match, and the place is full and it's packed, and your whole student body is there watching those games.
And how close are we to getting pet buses or some sort of transportation to have schools bring
Don't the small schools do it?
They probably do.
or call school off?
I think a lot of those smaller schools do some of that stuff, where they'll change their schedule around a state tournament appearance, and
Have we seen a Chester score at all?
Chester, I believe, was
They
up in the
one.
first
Oh, I saw
set.
How about Coleman Egan? I'm interested in that one right there too.
Well, I can sure pull them up for you.
Let's see. You know, Sioux Falls, like playing Sioux Falls, Washington, when Karen would go to Sioux Falls, Washington, I always thought you did us a favor. Wanna know why?
Why?
Because your student body was on the other side of us, you know, and not like if we had us flipped, our left or outsides would be more by your student body, because Sioux Falls, Washington has a great student body, and I think the student bodies can be the seventh man.
Absolutely.
But our outside hitters never had to be by your student body. That's the first time. I would never have told you that if I was gonna have to be a coach and travel there again. But in a lot of ways,
We're gonna change our home side.
but like in a lot of ways, when you go to Mitchell and play, their student body is right there by your outside hitters, and that plays a little bit. No, it plays a lot of bit. Sometimes the mentality of your team, especially your outside hitters.
That was not a luxury we had in high school. We did not have a very good student body following.
Yeah, 15-14 over here.
I just really think that you know, when I was at the O'Gorman Washington match coaching, the one thing that I did was in almost a standing room only was look around the crowd. And do you know there was a lot of older gentlemen there? I think just now a certain sector of people that really like athletics are starting to fall in love with volleyball. They see the athleticism, they see the teamwork. It just takes me, you got, 30 by 30, and you've got 6 people in that space, and the timing and the rhythm and the communication, and it's just got to be, you can't have a week's link at all. And that's what I liked about going to that match, was just watching the crowd.
Parkston?
Parkston takes the 5th, second upset in the past 2 minutes.
That was a 5-12.
Yep.
You know, I'm considerably older than the both of you, and I remember the days when in South Dakota I was coaching when volleyball was in the winter. And maybe we had 20 student body there. Maybe. We didn't get to play the same nights as boys basketball, so we were playing on Mondays and Tuesdays and Thursdays when the boys weren't playing. So I really, really love the fact and how the student bodies are starting to grow, and the fan participation is growing, where people really want to go to the gym and watch volleyball.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, look at some of these crowds here in the schools here now for the Sodak.
Yeah. This is a stay alive set for Gayville Vollen. Chester up 2-0, 22-20 in the 3rd set.
I think the libero for Chester, she's just an 8th grader.
Yep, Emery Larson, I believe, is her name. According to their stats, she's already notched 1,000 digs between last season and this season.
Her mom was a Huron Tiger. So and her mom is also the track coach at Chester. So do you want to have a conversation on how we pronounce? Is it libero or is it libero?
Are we going to get in trouble if we open that can of worms?
I say libero because Dr. Mike Hebert from the U of M, again, I'm a lot older than you guys. This was when the concept of the libero was coming back, or just becoming new, because it is a Europe thing, and he said it was libero, and that's because it was Dr. Mike Hebert. That's how I say it. So what we just say is, to be a libero, you have to be one of the best athletes, you have to be one of the toughest, you have to be a leader, and you got to have thick skin, and so we just call it bro. You're the bro.
Yeah.
It takes the whole conversation out of there.
Yeah. I think tomato, whatever you like.
Actually, they say both ways is correct. Yeah.
That's the aggressive tip you like to see placed by Gable Volleyball is
Tip with a purpose.
Yeah, one thing I liked watching, we were kind of talking about it a little bit, is in those last few points, Chester still stayed aggressive. They still took swings, and even in some of those chaotic plays, they didn't just revert to get the ball over. They had a purpose to what they were doing.
So as Chester will move on to state, again, we have Miller taking on Coleman Egan now, down 2-0. Coleman Egan's up 14-11 here in the third. Coleman Egan coming off of just such an emotional win just a couple nights ago against Bridgewater Emory. They had that rematch to even make it to the Sodak 16. How do you talk to your team after an emotional match, especially when it comes to postseason, when these matches do mean so much? How do you make sure that they can bounce back? Because a lot of times, even when you're talking about during a state tournament, you might only have 24 hours in between two big matches. How do you hit that reset button and not let it take a toll emotionally?
I think it's just one of those conversations you have. I know I even talked about it with our girls after the big O'Gorman game. And really it was something I read in one of the books that I'm reading right now. As I told the girls, you have until midnight to think about this win, and then when 12:01 hits, we got to think about the next match.
Yeah.
Because sometimes you can get caught up and you know, for these girls, that Bridgewater Emory game could have been the game of the season.
Yeah.
And really, if they come in with that mentality, really it should be the next game. It should be the game to get to state. And then if they do that, then it's okay, let's win first round. And then second round, and hopefully play for a state title from there.
Mm-hmm.
The one thing we always talk about is game amnesia. You know, in volleyball, it's really a game of mistakes, or limiting your mistakes. And so if you can forget the last point and just focus on the next one, or in the moment, it's the same thing no matter what. If you've lost a big match, because a lot of times when you lose a big match, that causes the next two to be even harder to win or to play well. We call that the deer in the headlights look. So if you can stay in the moment, no matter if it's a win or a loss, again, that takes a lot of practice, it takes a lot of conversations, it takes a lot of education or self-awareness, and it takes a lot of self-discipline to do that.
Yeah.
I think the Big Ten really has to work on that, don't you think? Don't you think that's a huge conversation for them? Day in and day out with the conversation, or the competition that they have? Coleman Egan, the spring club volleyball, we're not a big club like Cairo's. We've pretty much stayed as the Huron Volleyball Club. We do have some surrounding area kids participate as well. We'd like to have more, but we've seen Coleman Egan now really expand their club and how they're out participating. They are very athletic, and it's been really fun to watch them develop their program. But I think their formula too is they've kept their club as theirs, and they're playing together in the
that make, during the high school season, after you see, girls like that taking that next step to play more club volleyball and to play all year round, how do you see that in their skills, in their mental game? Just how big of a difference does that make?
I think really it's gotten bigger in the last 10 years, and I think that's kind of showed with how competitive all three classes are. Girls are getting better because they're getting more touches.
Mm-hmm.
And I think the tough part with volleyball is if you're not playing club, it's hard to get those touches.
Mm-hmm.
For basketball, look at any small town or even in Sioux Falls, there's basketball hoops all over the place, and you can go shoot and work on your skills, where volleyball is such a team sport that as an attacker, it's harder to get better if you don't have a setter. As a setter, it's harder to get better if you don't have somebody passing to you. So really, for those girls to get those extra touches in the off season has been crucial to just the development of the game in South Dakota.
Yeah, the 90s, we didn't have club. It was just on the brink. At Southwest State, when I was way back, Minnesota was just starting their club. And so I was aware of it, but a lot of us didn't have it.
Mm-hmm.
And it wasn't until the late 90s where all of a sudden, here we won the state national, or the state championship in 98, 99, felt like a national championship. And then all of a sudden in 2000, we're like, what happened in a matter of 1 year? Well, a lot of the schools were playing club, especially the ones in Sioux Falls, and it made a huge difference. And you could see that if we didn't hurry up and get a club in Huron, we were going to fall behind quickly. And so I think a lot of the teams that you're watching now in the Sodak 16, they've got clubs, even in the A's and the B's. They're playing club in some manner. Mm-hmm. It may not be in the form of Kairos. I think each squad has their own different formula.
And I think that's one thing too, Haley and I being from Iowa, I think club's been around more there than it has been in South Dakota. Mm-hmm. And you just kind of see that with the really good teams that play year round. And it's not necessarily that they're just playing volleyball, but they're getting those touches. Because we were talking about Western Christian earlier in Iowa. A lot of their girls are good basketball players, and they run track and they're fast. So it's not that they're just doing volleyball, but they're getting those touches throughout the year because, just like with anything, you're not going to get better at it unless you work at it. Mm-hmm. So
I think if I had a choice between a one-sport athlete playing all the year round to both mentally and physically, and they say, especially since volleyball is such a repetitive shoulder and shoulder and shoulder and diving on the same knees all the time, and it is important that we get kids a rest. Mm-hmm. And so for like in Huron, if they're playing basketball and not even thinking about volleyball for a while, we like that. We like that a lot.
And I think, you talk about the repetitions, you can get reps from the mental side too. Mm-hmm. You can get reps trying to figure out how to be a better teammate, how to be more competitive, how you're going to react when you're down, no matter what the sport is. So I think, that's something to be said for multi-sport athletes too, is figuring out those different parts of the game.
And look, we got to keep things in perspective. This is a game, right? It's not a matter of life and death. Now, we do know that athletics can teach us a lot of life lessons, but ultimately we've got to remember this is a game. And club volleyball is more than a game, I feel sometimes. It's a big business for a lot of people. Yeah. So, I hope we can keep things in perspective as we move along in society, that this is just kids and this is just a game, but yet it's really fun getting good at what you do.
Yeah. And I'd agree with you too. That's one thing that we push with the girls at Washington is I want you to be involved in something else, whether that's basketball or doing track or playing golf.
Drama.
And you don't want to do the same movements over and over and over and over. So you want to work those different muscle groups. And I think too, kind of talking with what Haley had said, one conversation that we have is you might be the star and the stud on the volleyball court, but it's good for you to play basketball and maybe be a reserve and know what that position feels like, so you can be that better teammate and have that different perspective than just the one who's on the floor all the time.
Because we all know role players are very vital. There's a reason why a
Right,
backup
yeah.
quarterback is paid a ton of money to be a backup quarterback, right?
Yeah.
And there's a reason why we have scout teams on football, NFL and stuff. So I think there's a lot of value in being a role player, though today's society, sometimes we lose that.
Yeah. Yeah, it's very much, it's tough to come by a girl that can go be on the team for 4 years and have a limited role and be okay with that. And yeah.
So I think although they don't maybe receive as much attention from, outsiders, I feel, at least the teams that I've been a part of, those role players do get a ton of praise and are valued and know that they're valued, and that's been really important for coaches and other athletes that I've played with, at least.
We hope as coaches we do that.
Yes.
We try really hard, and if the kids are getting the message, that's a whole nother thing. But I think we all know how important a role player is.
So we see Coleman Egan will make it to their second straight state tournament. They take Miller 3-0.
A little surprise on this Wagner Elk Point Jefferson. No disrespect to Elk Point. I thought Wagner had a really good solid team.
Wagner they have been consistent, and I know they have talented role players as well. And we talk about teams that are successful have multiple options. They definitely have that in a few of their players.
One thing, Kelly, Double A, we mix the serves up, right? One thing I've noticed here, maybe the serving's a little bit more safe. I haven't seen a lot of short drops yet, have you? I haven't seen a lot of corner serves either. That'd be one thing that I would say is that probably would be different at the Double A level.
I feel too, and maybe it's different, but I feel like the games that we've watched, they've served at the liberos quite a bit. I mean, there's definitely some times, and just because you're a libero doesn't mean that you're the best serve receive passer. Maybe you're the best defender.
It's a whole different skill.
Yeah, but it's definitely interesting to see these teams serve at the libero.
At our level, sometimes you're not trying to, but our liberos can have the skill and the ability to take over the game or take the pass, and you want them to, typically at our level, but I don't know if it's... And maybe we have to serve harder at the Double A level to get anything generated.
Well, we talk about offense and defense, and if we don't get teams out of system, it's tough to play defense when you're in system and the setter can set all three attackers, or your middles can at least run something fast. It holds up your middle blocker, and if you can get teams out of system, it just makes it easier for that middle to get to the outside where a majority of the balls are going to go.
And I'm not a rocket scientist, so I didn't invent this, but we because we always figured serving was our first line of defense and we had to get teams out of system to have any success, we charted our serves too. And I don't know if a lot of people keep that stat, but that was one of my favorite stats, was to see who was serving the toughest or getting, if you're in rotation one, are we getting you out of system? Maybe that was why your outside hitter wasn't as successful,
Yeah.
because she was hitting not in system.
So you would stat out not only your passer rating, but the other team's
Mhm.
passer rating.
Taking notes on that?
He probably does. He's probably doing it already.
All right.
And I mean, that's one thing too, I mean, we talk about film and those things, you know, we have huddle and we have huddle assist, and I mean, that's just another thing with technology that I can send that in and they break down both sides, and
Yeah.
they'll show side out percentage for both teams in rotation one, they'll show a shot chart so you can see, you know, if you play them again, like, hey, this outside hit cross court every play, she never went down the line, so we don't have to defend it and those different things. And
Heat map.
yeah.
Where's the heat map?
You know, at least when I was in college, we always knew it was going to be a bad film day when coach came in with a printout of exactly what the percentages were, because that meant that they weren't good, obviously. Because no coach just comes into a film session to tell you how great you are, but definitely tell you a lot.
You know, I stayed away from film sessions with kids. I don't know how you felt about that.
You know, I'm kind of back and forth with it because I just don't know. I mean, and I don't want to say this in a bad way, I just don't know how much they can pay attention and stay focused for that amount of time. You know, even sometimes with scouting reports, you know, sometimes maybe as coaches we can get a little bit too extensive. I know I had, the year we got runner up, I would write out some scouting reports, and the girls just finally said, hey, like, this is too much for us, we just want to be able to go out and play and do our own thing. And obviously, it kind of worked for them. I think it maybe hurt us a little bit in the finals, but you know, they didn't want to have to think about all of that stuff and what they needed to do individually. They just kind of wanted
I
to
think-
go out and play.
Too, in your film session, the kids are their worst critics. I don't think sometimes they're watching what they're supposed to be watching.
Mm-hmm.
They're seeing other things, but if you can't send a positive message these days, these kids just aren't,
Yep.
they dial out.
Mm-hmm.
And so I think I was more into pictures. So if I could take a clip from huddle and just take a picture of it and just say, okay, look at your hands, look at your eyes, look at your first step. They were a little bit more receptive to that. Plus it was private, it wasn't in a big room.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. That's funny. I just got a text from Michael the other day. He sent us an old scouting report. Just go ahead and take a look
Oh,
at
Randy?
take a look at that. Yeah. He was cracking up about the difference. I mean, it literally says when a certain blocker is up, take one step to the right. When another blocker is up, take one step to the left. I literally wrote down, like I had tape on my wrist, I wrote down exactly what I needed.
Did you do it?
Yeah, that was the
Yeah.
match we won.
Yeah.
But it's just hilarious to think, you know, just what a difference it can make. But I guess it really does depend on your personnel if they can handle it, because it is a percentage game. But
Well, and sometimes too, you know, at the college level, you maybe have 2 games a week, and they're later in the week, where we might have Tuesday, Thursday night. So
well, yeah, you also have
Monday you're prepping for your Tuesday game, and
Yeah.
Wednesday you're
Mhm.
prepping for your Thursday game. So you don't really
Mhm.
have a whole lot of time to say, hey, we're gonna go watch film today for, you know, 20, 30 minutes, and
So do you
So-
call serves?
my assistant
You
coach
did,
does
yeah.
that.
That's one thing we took out. We usually went in with just a strategy of how we were gonna attack each rotation. So at our scouting report in rotation one, we wanted the ball to go here or here. and my kids asked me to stop calling serves and just let them make that decision. Now, in certain situations, maybe I might whisper, or
Yeah.
they might
Think
look
about
over,
it.
they might look over and go, you know, and you tell
See,
them
we kind of had it the opposite way. We had girls were like, even in practice, they're like, can you tell me a zone? So. But I think, I mean, without calling zones, if you're telling your girls like, hey, rotation 1, we're going
Yeah.
here, and you kind of have that game plan going in, you know, that's not really going to change a whole lot from what serves you maybe give them
right.
live. It would be interesting to see, you know, just what the girls would maybe do in those situations where it's, you know, because there's a lot of times where it's deep serve, deep serve, deep serve, and then all of a sudden, okay, let's throw in a short serve. I see that they're backing up because we've gone deep, and you know, would the girls be able to read and see that and make that decision?
You know, in club, we've asked our older club coaches not to call serves, simply for that fact, that they gotta figure it out and think. I think that's helped too. Again, that's just a club philosophy that we've always tried. Not saying it always works. But reading the game and digesting what you're seeing is very, very important.
It's a tough skill to work on. It's a tough skill to get and learn.
You think that Elk Point Jefferson's coach her tummy has butterflies right now?
Maybe. That is the 4
Yeah, 4-12,
Elk Points. Let me see.
4-13.
13. 4-13 matchup. I don't believe these two would have played in the regular season.
No. Oh, they did at Cavalier Clash. Wagner won at 2-0.
Hmm.
I really prefer colors. I don't know about you, but I really like the colors.
You like the colors?
I do.
Yeah, I'd stick with the colors. Makes it more festive.